All right, welcome to the first week of the playoffs. Tim is already giggling because of Wes, so we know we got a great guest. We wanted to, and I'll make Drew feel bad for this, even though he's completely okay. We wanted to have Drew on because how often do you get to just pull in one of the worst fantasy football seasons of all time, uh, and just get to grill him for it while talking about the playoffs and actual good teams the entire time. But we went for our backup. We got Wes in because our shtick only lasts so long. So we're bringing in the comedic genius. So last weekend, not a lot of updates. Actually, none of the stuff that we talked about last week for the playoffs coming up really mattered, except for two things, and those were the two choices by the top two seeds. Kranz was unable to hit that 8 seed. So the 8 seeds are the top 8 teams in the league by standings, irregardless. And then I missed out on the league leader points. Libby was able to grab that because he scores 150 points every week.
And he wasn't smug at all about it.
Yeah. Well, and then he just turned around and ripped my heart out. So I suppose we can get into the decisions by the top two seeds. So those are Libby and Seth. Libby chose my team, and Seth chose Sam.
Right.
Wes, what do you think about those two picks overall?
I think probably bad. I probably would have picked my team because I don't have Lamar Jackson. I'm playing Kirk Cousins, but I tried to kind of bluff my way out of it by threatening Libby last week, and it might have worked. He seemed a little scared on the podcast, so yeah. So I mean, I think it was a fine pick. I probably wouldn't have picked your team, Luke, but Sam's team's very low floor. I could see his team throwing up a dud. So I think they're respectable choices, but I would pick my team because I'm pretty garbage.
Did either of you talk to Seth about how serious he was when he said he also considered taking me?
No.
Yeah. I just thought it was interesting that he mentioned that. Not because I want to crap on my own team or anything like that. I just thought it was interesting that he brought that up because Libby played it really well last week when he was on the podcast. I had no idea that he was even considering picking my team because he didn't even bring it up. I probably would have just gone with Tom anyway. Just guarantee yourself the win. But I do understand from actually, so if I were him, I would have played Ross. It would have been risky, but I think it's just as risky as playing me. And his whole explanation for why he was playing me was so that he didn't have to play Ross. So why not get it over with? I think it's not bad. Tim, what do you think?
It was interesting that they both have the same reason of the Raiders are playing the Patriots, which I guess is an okay thing, but that's a dangerous game to play in fantasy because even if we know if the Raiders might lose and they might have a bad game, but the Raiders players will still put up points. That's happened all season long. So I don't know if I buy that logic. And I think I'm trying to remember last year too. One of the top teams picked like the 3rd or 4th ranked team in kind of a power move and fired in their face. It might have actually been me. I don't know why I can't remember, but I don't know. It seems a little risky to me.
Yeah, okay. Go ahead, Wes.
Fantasy football is like 60% luck, 40% karma. And I think Libby's got some bad karma going for himself right now because he's trying to change this rule where the top seed picks their matchup and the second seed also picks their matchup because it didn't work out last year or there were upsets last year. It's just some bad karma juju going on there where I wouldn't be surprised if you see Libby fall this week because he shouldn't be trying to change the rule just because it makes him sweat a little bit. Just saying.
I think he's Thanos. I mean, do I agree with the decision? No, but is he inevitable? Most likely. I tried my best to look at his team this week and come up with a way that I could win. But barring the Raiders just absolutely dominating the Patriots offensively, I don't know. I will not be starting the Raiders defense again this week, to be fair. So I will only have 2 Raiders. They are the 2 best Raiders. And they are 2 of the best fantasy football players. So
don't you have Daniel Carlson, Jacobs, Carlson, and Devontae?
Okay, fine. He's a top 3 kicker.
Is that a law firm?
Yeah.
There you go.
I see a recipe for you, Luke, where you've got Adams, Jefferson, and Jacobs. That could be 90 points right there on the right week.
I mean, it's the recipe that I've been brewing all season. I think Seth against Sam. I think that was the right pick for Seth. I just got off a plane. Sam, luckily, I didn't have to worry about Justin Fields, which Seth will have to. So that would be the only caution that I would have for Seth's team is that just wild card 50-point game from Fields, which is always there. But again, with Libby's decision, if I was Seth, I would have just picked Tom again. I mean, Libby tried to talk him up with the Burrow Chase thing, them coming back. But man, you just look at his team and it's really rough. Wes, you have a pretty good matchup in for your playoff. I think your game is projected to be 1 point.
You've got that
No, I
mistaken
think-
with the
I
other
think
one.
Lucas is projected
Is it
to
the
be-
other one?
Yeah, Lucas is projected at 122 points. Wes is
That's what it-
points.
So then it's yeah. But I think Lucas's team, and I'm gonna throw this to you, Wes, to go over what you had at the bottom of your notes for the tier talk. With a rip off of Titus and Tate. Well done by you. Well, I think they're ripping off what's his name, the Andy Katz, because Andy Katz always is the tier talk because he doesn't like giving actual rankings. But I think Lucas's team is really, really good. If I were to be able to change my team crush from Sam's team to Lucas's team, I probably would at this point. It's just too crazy. So Wes, I want you to go through your tier rankings for the playoffs teams.
It's okay to have a bad tier crush. You had a couple drinks. You looked across the bar. You were a little confused. And then daylight came and you're like, oh, Sam's team is, well, you know.
Sam's team's like basically my fiance or wife at this point, where like I'm always gonna go back to her. So probably fiance, but that doesn't mean that my eye wanders every once in a while. And you're just like, so I won't say wife, I'll say fiance in that standpoint. But you're like, man, I'm committed to this, but Lucas's team is looking real good tonight. There's just some like it just brought, you know, it's an Eagles Thursday night game, and you see how many points he leaves the Thursday night with AJ Brown and Hurts, and you're just like, whew, I could get on board with that.
Yeah. So my tiers that I was putting together for this were I put Libby, Seth, and Lucas's teams as the clear top 3, where I just looked at their rosters and I didn't feel like there was a whole lot of weak points. And sure, Libby's team is probably a bit better, but at the end of the day, I could see any of those 3 teams winning. And like you said, Lucas's his roster is just really solid, especially with Jonathan Taylor kind of coming on. And he doesn't seem to have too many weaknesses. I gave Ross his own tier and I called it Kiss the Ring because some frickin' how Ross has his 3 first draft picks go terrible. Like Kyle Pitts, Cooper Kupp gets injured, and then Delvin Cook has like a mediocre year for how high he was drafted. And he's still really good and just very respectable. And he probably won't win because his team's not like incredible, but it's foolish how good he is. And then I put Luke and myself in the 3rd tier of make some noise, which I think I just mean like could win a game in the playoffs, but probably won't go too far. And then I put high variability, low likelihood for Sam and Tom. So I think Sam and Tom could have like one nice game. I don't think it's very likely, but especially with the Jamar Chase, Joe Burrow thing, that plays into it. But I really don't see much happening there.
No. And I think I had mentioned a couple of weeks ago that our teams are very similar, not in like how they're constructed, but just in our kind of wins and loss streaks throughout the course of the year. We basically just kind of stayed in that 4th to 5th area the entire year. So, yeah, who knows what's going to happen there. So you went through your tier talk. So now we're going to, because the playoffs are the playoffs, we'll talk about that more as they continue on. But we do have a summary of the regular season. So those of you that are not a part of the playoffs, you can be involved in this because we are going to talk about your teams. But we're going to do it from a just regular season standpoint. Wes was kind enough to come up with awards for each one of the teams and hand them out, and has various reasons for why he chose to do so. So I will pass it off to Wes to offer up his awards to every team in the league.
Sure. I'll try not to be too long-winded here. Tim, Luke, feel free to jump in at all. So I'm going to go from worst record to top record, just kind of reverse order using the ESPN rankings. So up first was Drew going 2-12. So, I mean, it was bad, man. It's real bad. I looked at his draft day picks, and there wasn't anything really good to say. And then midway through the year, he ended up trading ETN for Brady.
So you can't even have him as a keeper.
Yeah. The one thing I wanted to make Drew not feel too bad about himself, just an incredible team name. It's been said probably 5-6 times on this podcast, but I think it needs to be said again. Just real good there. So Drew gets the perfect storm award because it just feels like everything went perfectly wrong against him, and it was the perfect storm of a season. And better luck next year, big guy.
Sorry, Drew. It's probably the most we've ever talked about him all year. Besides
Yeah,
his name.
so we're gonna have to get him on over the playoffs. We gotta pin him down on just this season because it is spectacular. It's not even like Kranz last year or even me last year bad. It's just like you just feel sorry. You're not even like you're so stupid at fantasy football. You're just like that was about as bad as it can get.
Yeah. You guys got anything on there? Jump to Matthew.
Nah.
All right.
Keep
So
rolling.
Matthew's 4-10. And honestly, he had a really solid points for, and he's just not a bad team. I looked at his roster and I was like, I think I would switch players with him, just like a roster for roster swap. He looked fine. The one thing that I think is going to come back when we get to Libby's team, Matthew really, really fell on the DeAndre Swift grenade. I don't know if you guys remember draft day. Those two are playing footsie with each other over Swift.
Yep.
And Libby kept going up to like the high 40s to the low 50s, the mid 50s. And eventually Matthew ended up pulling him in for $59. And you're welcome, Libby, because dang, your team would have been much worse without that. So because of that very reason, Matthew gets the jumping on the grenade award for the year.
That's like butterfly effect for fantasy football. Like if Kranz gets that or Libby gets DeAndre Swift, who doesn't T-draft, and how does his team look? That's crazy.
Yeah, Kranz probably has some of the best keeper decisions to go through, like Garrett Wilson and who else? Drake London.
A lot of good rookie wideouts.
Yeah, and I don't know. Like I'm looking at his roster right now, Wes, and I completely agree. Just like if J.K. Dobbins wouldn't have gotten hurt, that's solid. DeAndre Swift, if he wouldn't have gotten hurt, is a solid. And if those rookie wide receivers just weren't rookie wide receivers that have limited ceilings, his team probably could have been pretty good. And he has the number one kicker, Justin Tucker.
I love his commitment to the bit of Justin Tucker. I feel like he always has him in any team I've ever seen Matthew have. It's very nice. Yeah.
He also, I will just throw in one negative because I'm always negative about Kranz's team. So I'll just stay to form. I hate that Josh Allen's on his team. It drives me insane that one of the best fantasy football players was on a bottom 3 team the entire league, or the entire year in the league.
If it makes you feel better, he's not going to watch this video, so he'll never hear you say that.
I know. It's awesome. He's the ultimate punching bag because he just doesn't know.
All right, we'll jump to the next team. So Stefan 5-9. I think my favorite comment, what you guys said about Stefan's team earlier in the year, was it looked like he auto drafted all his players, even though he obviously did, and we saw him there. He was on camera, but his team looked like the picture, and they were doing really well at the beginning of the year, and things the wheels fell off for him there. So one comment I had about his team is Leonard Fournette, Najee Harris, his running backs 1 and 2. They play like they have cement blocks on their feet. They just look so slow. And Deontay Johnson, like, is he ever actually open? And why doesn't he score touchdowns? They throw it to him so much. So I called Stefan's team the eye test team because I watch his running backs and his wideouts, and they don't look like they're good at football, which is important.
So, Tim, let me throw this by you. Is Deontay Johnson the inverse of Adam Thielen? So, Deontay Johnson, lots of catches, never scores, just kind of a yardage PPR guy. Thielen never catches the ball, but almost every year before this year has had 10 touchdowns.
Yeah, I think that's pretty fair. Adam Thielen is never seen outside of the red zone.
Christian Watson. Every time he touches the ball, it's a touchdown.
All right. I'm not going to talk about the Packers. I will not be baited.
All right. So the eye test team for Stefan. So Tim's team is next, 5-9. One thing I respect about Tim's management style is he's always looking to trade and wheel and deal. He's like Costner on draft day. He's flipping every piece for every piece. He never finishes a year with the same roster that he drafted, or even like 1% of the roster that he drafted. And I think he won both of his trades this year. So he dumped Lamar, and then Lamar went on to be bad and then get injured and be bad. And he got Trevor Lawrence, who's really coming on good. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, we don't need to talk about. He's garbage. And then Chris Olave, who's like a really good receiver. And then his other trade was Joe Burrow and Kamara for Gabe Dave and Zeke Elliott. So that was maybe more of a coin flip, but I think overall Tim's trades were good. His injury luck was just apocalyptic. And then on top of that, he got to come onto this podcast every week and see Luke talk about how he was getting wins and complain about his team. So I gave Tim the Charlie Brown Award.
Just wait till you see the award that I gave myself. Yes.
What a flip the script between 2021 and 2022, because if we would have done this last year, it would have been me in the Tim position just being like, what do I even do? Like, I don't even check my team during the week because it's so bad. Tim, I did have an interesting thing to bring up when you mentioned all the trades and stuff. Would you, if you could, trade next year's draft dollar allocations for players this year? So if you could be like, I will give you $10 of my next year's draft salary for Waddle, would you be interested in doing that as the trade maestro?
Interesting. Yes, I have always said that we should be able to trade draft picks and draft money. So yes, I would. I would love any.
It would turn into like the Premier League with like paying a transfer fee for somebody, but it would come out of next year's budget as opposed to this year's budget. That would be really funny to have somebody win the championship because they traded all of their draft money away, and then they just turn into the Rams.
Let's make that happen, Libby, Commissioner. I'm sure that'll be easy to set up.
Yeah, do that.
Collusion. All right, so Tom is the next team, 6-8. So do you guys remember the movie Blades of Glory that starred Will Ferrell and Napoleon Dynamite?
Yeah, that was made far more famous than it ever had the right to be because of Watch the Thrones or Watch the Throne.
Yeah, Game of Thrones, exactly. And so there's a move that the guys try to do in Blades of Glory called the Iron Lotus, which is like the gold standard of figure skating moves. And you're either going to chop off your teammate's head or you're going to get like the 10.0 score or whatever. And that's Tom's team. So I gave him the Iron Lotus because he's either going to get Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow to blow up and go off, or he's going to implode and be really, really bad. So the Iron Lotus. There you go, Tom.
Yeah, nicely done.
Keep it rolling, Wes.
No notes.
Okay. Sam's team, I don't know what to do with this. It's weird. Like it's like Luke said, he had a couple drinks at the bar. He was ogling and then went out into the daylight and kind of regretted the ogling. He had some interesting trades where he brought in Derrick Henry, I think, at a good time. And I think Henry's going to have a next good couple weeks, honestly. He sent out Hurts, but he had Fields, so he didn't really need Hurts. So I think it was kind of a good decision to do that. Honestly, his roster screamed hipster to me. He's got like Tony Pollard, Justin Fields, Sutton, Rondale Moore, Kadarius Toney. Like, it's just very hipstery. I can't put my finger on it exactly why. So he gets the beard butter and no deodorant. No deodorant award.
This is my favorite award, and I think you're spot on with the hipster thing because it's like the guy who knows way more about football than you, constructing a team of people you never heard of but are actually good. I think that's the hipster thing.
Yeah, it's almost like, well, it's not quite exact because Sam does draft some of those hipster guys, but it's like if a normal fantasy football owner did the draft and then gave it to his friend who's way into fantasy football, and he's just like, wait, this league doesn't know about Kadarius Toney? Pick him up. Get rid of one of these guys you drafted. Let's get out of here. Do you know who's actually sneaky the best wide receiver in the league? CeeDee Lamb. Like, well, or he's not.
Exactly. Did you know that you're not supposed to wear deodorant? So that's what I went with that.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
a good one.
Liver King told me that, and to not take steroids.
Exactly. Yep.
Time to talk
All
about
right.
your own team.
Yeah, I didn't really want to talk about my own team, but who I did want to talk about was Travis Kelce because he is incredible, phenomenal, every superlative you could ever give. So I don't have any like ability in fantasy football. I don't know anything, but having Travis Kelce was a blessing. And I was going to give you 3 Travis Kelce stats. One, he averages more points per game than the tight end 4 and the tight end 5 combined. Pretty incredible. He has 217 points on the season, and the tight end 2 has 129 points, which is less than 60% of Kelce. Just an incredible, like, upper echelon performance. And then he went on a 9-week stretch there where he didn't go dip below 13 points for a single game for 9 straight games. So
I always
So what-
like
Oh,
the guy
go ahead,
who,
Tim.
the guy who drafts Travis Kelce in the auction draft, I'm always like, really? You're gonna pay $50 for Travis Kelce? And that's what I think on draft night. And then towards the end of the season, when he's like the number 1 tight end for 5 years in a row, I'm like, oh, that's why you paid $50 for him.
Yeah, so because I'm going to go through the rankings of NFL players fantasy-wise. So I have the top 5 tight ends pulled up, and Kelce averaged 16.7 points a game. Mark Andrews, who's the number 2 tight end, averaged 10.7. TJ Hawkinson, 9.6. Evan Ingram, who just jumped in because of one game, averaged 8.3. And then Taysom Hill at 8.6. Travis Kelce is so much better than every single other person at the tight end position. It is incredible. It's why the tight end position should be eliminated. You should be able to pick Kelce as a wide receiver or flex if you want to. But the tight end position is barely a fantasy football position, and Kelce is just so much better. It's unbelievable.
I'm in another league where I don't have Travis Kelce, and I'm in the tight end wasteland where every week you're trying to get someone off waivers. And it's like Russian roulette with a revolver, but instead of 1 bullet, there's 5 bullets. And there's one gap. So you have like an 86% chance you're gonna blow your brains out. But you might get a guy who gets a touchdown. So.
Rough.
All right. So the award I gave myself, I couldn't decide. So I'll give myself the group project assignment in college where you have the one person who does all the work and everybody else is just kind of like there. And
Oh, yeah.
watches all the work.
That was actually my favorite award name, by the way. I thought that was really, really clever.
All right. So the next team was Lucas. He got Hurts and Jonathan Taylor in a trade, which is really nice. And he seems to have completely avoided injuries. I
Taylor.
think that's good, which we kind of talked about before. And he only dipped below 100 3 times in the season. He might be Iron Lotus 2.0 because he's got Hurts and AJ Brown. So I give him the 2019 Toronto Raptors because that team didn't have any weaknesses. They were really great across the board. And then they had Kawhi Leonard, who was just peaking at the right moment, which I think could maybe happen with Jalen Hurts. So I could see them winning it all.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Very-
I've already said my stuff about Lucas's team. I like his team a lot.
we're also getting into another one that I talked about a little bit with Ross. I mean, I thought his 3 top picks were duds, and he's still incredible. And his team's resilient. So I gave him the Thanos quote of "I am inevitable." You said that about Libby earlier, but I think Ross is inevitable in a grander sense, where you just have
Historically.
you have to bow and kiss the ring. Yeah, he's incredible.
Yeah, he had the waiver. I said this last week, waiver wire pickup of the year with Christian Watson, even though I spent like 28, 29 bucks on him. Still the best pickup by any team. Completely mitigated the loss of what's his butt? Cooper Cup.
Yeah, if you can survive Cooper Cup going down, you're doing pretty good. All right, so Luke's team was 9-5. I was looking at the number of transactions that each team had. Luke was like the Travis Kelce of our league for a number of transactions, where he was so far above second place.
Six. You could take care of 6 in a week. I also, Wes, have 2 players on my bench. I have the most roster moves and 2 players on my bench.
What happened to your bench? There's nobody there. You just dropped them all?
I consistently every week probably drop two to 3 players.
You're a purger. Gotcha. I'm a hoarder.
Yeah, because like I'm switching out tight ends every week, so that's one almost automatic drop, and then defense and special teams, I'm usually swapping those out, so that's another.
So I love the top of your team, but like when I say top, I mean like 3 players, and then I really hate everybody else. So for you, I said the ceiling is the roof.
Yeah, that's a good one.
All right, Seth is 10-4. Honestly, his team's pretty incredible. I thought too. His one weakness was the wide receiver tight end spot, and it honestly wasn't that bad because he could put in Gallup or Charks or find someone off waivers. He has a really good special teams and defense and kicker, which I think is kind of something that you can go underrated going into the playoffs, because having the 49ers D, they're not gonna throw up a dud. I don't think that's gonna happen. And he's got a really nice tight end with Freiermuth. And his QB situation seems to be set because he's got Herbert, who's kind of coming on now, so he shouldn't have to do any roster massaging there. And since since Seth doesn't really do much talking or trades or emails or anything, I gave him the walk softly but carry a big stick award.
Very true. I think I think he's gotten a little lucky too on the injury front, but I think his team is also just very good.
Yeah, I brought up the Christian McCaffrey thing last week too, that him being traded was just an absolute boon for Seth. I think if he was still on Carolina, it would be rough. I suppose they're going for the playoffs, so he'd still be playing really consistently, but it seemed like his ceiling there was limited, where with the Niners, they're like a Super Bowl favorite now, and he's a big reason for that.
Brock Purdy feeding him the rock.
Yeah, and then DJ Chark finally had a good week. Finally, somebody picked him off of waivers, started him, and he played well.
DJ Chark is like, there's like 6 guys every season who like float in and out of waivers. Like you got Mac Hollins, you've got like Randall Cobb and
Donovan Peoples-Jones.
Yeah, Donovan Peoples-Jones. They're always floating there at the top.
Nelson Aguilar.
Drop him next.
Jacoby Meyer.
Yeah.
All right, so I think my Libby award's gonna come off as a hater, which I'm not trying to be a hater. Here we go. So he's got an incredible team. Like having James Conner as your flex is pretty stupid. Having Mike Evans, Juju Smith-Schuster, and Devontae Smith on your bench is pretty ridiculous. Those could be my top 3 wide receivers probably on my team. His tight end and Tua are probably his weaknesses. Tua seems to be kind of falling off here. And he's gotten really lucky injury-wise this season. So this is where I'm going to start sounding like a hater. He also fleeced on the Damian Harris trade in a way that you guys talked about last week. And then the aforementioned Matthew jumping on the DeAndre Swift grenade, which was the butterfly effect for the entire season. So my final thought on Libby was, is he actually good or is he just lucky? And so because of that, I gave him the Porque no los dos award from the commercial with the soft shell and the hard shell. Why not both, And then I started thinking about how much I was a hater for Libby. And I think it's kind of like when I was in school, I would see someone who's got like a 4.0, they're going to be a valedictorian or whatever. And I'm like, I'm just as smart as that person. Why do they have better grades than me? And then I'd be like, oh yeah, they work a lot harder than I do. And that's kind of important because I think he works a lot harder than I do at this. So
Could be. I would say that if you just look at his team, and then compare it to what a lot of people in other fantasy leagues complain about, the fact that he was able to draft Mike Evans and Juju Smith-Schuster and basically just not have to start them all year, and it wasn't just crippling to have a second or third wide receiver that you just have to start every week. Because I bet you anything, like if somebody else had Mike Evans, he would start every week. Libby doesn't have to. He just has Mike Evans. And like, same thing with Juju or Devontae Smith. Like, just look at his bench. It's incredible. And Nick Folk talked about the secret of having a number one kicker. Nick Folk, number one kicker. Just guaranteed 12 to 15 points every week. It's stupid. Kickers are dumb.
I hate kickers. Get rid of them. They're not athletes.
So stupid.
Nice awards, though. I like it.
Yeah, great job, Wes. All right. So, Tim, you had picked gifts for every single team
I sure did.
for the entire year. So you run with your stuff.
Let me share my screen because it's more fun that way. But yes, I have assigned, because we didn't have the ability of doing gifts as much this year in our columns. So I decided.
Which was a huge part of our columns from last year.
Yep. So this will be quick, but I gave a gift for each team that I think summarized their season. Drew, we have data saying I have not been entirely successful, which, it works because the data shows that Drew is bad because he had the most points against. So, that works. Sorry, Drew.
This is great because it's just going to be Tim explaining jokes for like 5 minutes.
I know. That's the best way to do it. And
Hey, guys.
This is Matthew's team, just kind of sitting there, minding his own business because we hated on him all year, and then he pops out at the end.
Yeah, he almost snuck into that 8 spot.
I know, it's 8 points. That was kind of crazy. And then Stefan is just Jeff Goldblum confused. I don't think I need to say much more about that.
That's great.
And then this is me on the video every single week. And this is Luke talking about his football team. I am sad, Ben Affleck. And this is Tom. I regret giving him Joe Burrow, but I think Tom's only identity of his team is Joe Burrow. So he's Joe Burrow.
Joe Cool. It's one of my favorite things that I've ever come up with in my head was that Joe Burrow is the most Tom quarterback in the NFL.
Yeah. Yep. I'm running with that continued joke for sure. It's true. And then Sam is the WWE guy coming out of the coffin because he was like in the bottom of the league for the first half of the year and just came back out of nowhere. And then Wes, Luke, this is from The Office, which is
it's a television show?
A U.S. sitcom that was adapted from a British sitcom in the mid-2000s. Pretty popular, but this is Wes kind of faking it to the playoffs as Dwight.
I heard that show didn't get good until like season 5 when Will Ferrell came on.
Yeah, he really brought it up a notch, yeah.
That's what I thought. James Spader too. That was big stuff.
Man. This is Lucas just kind of like casually being good and not really saying much about it.
I want to know where that kid ended up. In the gift. Is that from a sitcom?
A lot. I don't know. I think it's from like some kind of like, I don't know, PSA on computers or something.
That's great.
It's great.
Find that guy. Get him on the podcast.
Ross is the I am inevitable Thanos GIF. I looked at Wes's rankings and it's just, it makes sense. And then Luke is bold strategy Cotton. You're Jason Bateman.
I love it. I love that movie so much.
And we're still gonna see if it pays off. We're still waiting to see.
I know.
Nobody knows.
And then Seth is Happy Gilmore because he kind of looks like him. And because I was saying that he was lucky. Some might call it luck, but I guess it was luck. So that's
Uh-oh, Happy learned how to putt.
I know. Seth also likes golf, so this works. And then Libby is Bonesaw is ready. because he just he destroyed all of his opponents, and he's he's in the ring for 3 minutes.
3 minutes of playtime.
You're going nowhere. That's all I got.
It's great. That's really, really good. that worked out a lot better, Tim, than I thought it would. That was great. Good work by you.
Thank you.
All right, so now to get to the actual real NFL players that deserve awards for their work in the fantasy football realm. So this is going to definitely be the most boring awards of the two that we've gone through so far. But just wanted to shout out some names, some other numbers that I thought were really interesting. So I pulled the top 5 to 10 players from each position, and then basically if there was a player that was not the number 1 ranked player by points amount that I chose to be the best player at that position, it is because of their impact on the team that they're with. So for quarterbacks, your top 5 quarterbacks on the year are Jalen Hurts, number 1, Pat Mahomes, number 2, Josh Allen, number 3, Joe Burrow, number 4, Fields, 5. And that's with 1 missed week, I think.
Fields made the top 5, and we were talking about that like middle of the season. That's interesting.
Yep, top 5 quarterback at the end of the year on 12 games played to everyone else's 13. Out of this 5, upset to start it, I chose Pat Mahomes as the most valuable quarterback. Hurts is the best by points per game at about 26 to Mahomes 25.5. So a half point better there, about 6 points difference in overall points. But Ross got Mahomes for so cheap, and just it gave him consistency when Kupp went out that I think led to him being the most valuable player on the team, though he's not necessarily the top quarterback by points. But Pat Mahomes, you're the best quarterback,
So
easily.
Russell Wilson didn't make the top 5?
No, I think you would have been on the opposite side.
That's right.
Let's do it. Running back. Wow. What a year. Number 1 player, Josh Jacobs. Number 2, Eckler, McCaffrey, Henry, Chubb, Barkley, Pollard, Sanders, Aaron Jones, and Dalvin Cook to round out the top 10 I pulled there. I chose Josh Jacobs as the best running back. He is 20 points per game to Eckler, who's at number 2 at about 19, so a full point better. 14 points better overall in the same number of games. Josh Jacobs just had the year of his life. You can't take it away from him. So I'm going to give him the best running back, which typically means he's going to be my overall MVP, but I will just tease that that may not be the case. But Josh Jacobs.
Contract year for Jacobs.
I know.
Yeah. Picked a great year.
Yeah, except for me. So I'll just bring it. I'm narcissist, so I have to bring it back to myself all the time. I don't know whether or not to keep him or not. I mean, I just got this magical year for a cheap price and could keep him for relatively cheap. But like, what if he just goes back to being what he was not last year and the years before?
You might be able to save up some money for Trey Lance if you keep him for a cheap one.
It's true. I might just keep Trey Lance again. Actually, he's not on my team, so I can't do that. I purposely cut him right away just so I wouldn't. Wide receivers. I'll just do the top 10 here. I did pull 20, but number 1, Justin Jefferson. Number 2, Devontae Adams, Tyreek Hill, Diggs, Brown, Amon-Ra, CeeDee Lamb, Tyler Lockett, which I was surprised he was an overall top 10. Jalen Waddle. And then another shock, in only 9 games, this is how good Cooper Kupp is. In 9 games, he is the 10th ranked wide receiver. He's an absolute stud.
Stupid.
He averaged the 3rd most points per game. So by game average, he would have been 3rd, to still under Jefferson and Adams. That's why I'm a top 3 ranked team, is they're the 2 best wide receivers. So I picked Jefferson. Jefferson's the best wide receiver of the year. Devontae's close 2nd. Tyreek, very close 3rd. All those guys kind of Yeah, they separated themselves from the rest. Diggs was still really solid, but those three were easily the best. Jefferson, I think, solidified that with his last weekend performance, and he didn't even have a touchdown, and he still scored almost 30 points. Just an absolute stud. You're going to be shocked for the tight end. I already went through the list. Kelsey's the best tight end easily. Kicker I thought was interesting because there are 3 kickers tied for the most points total and their average points per game, obviously, because they've all played the same number of games. That is all tied for number 1, Tyler Bass, Justin Tucker, Daniel Carlson. Tied for technically 4th, Jason Myers and Nick Folk. Those 2 only scored 7 less points than the top 3. So there's quite a just log jam at the top if you had one of those 3. I think Justin Tucker is the only one that's kind of a wasted, or not. Justin Tucker wasn't on a top team. I can't even remember who I said has. Seth has Justin Tucker, right? No. Crayons has Tucker. Okay, there you go. So yeah, Tucker was the one good top kicker that is on a bad team. So way to steal a great quarterback and a great kicker, Crayons. Just for fun, even though it's the most pointless thing in the world, because I couldn't draw any conclusions from it, defense, special teams. Do you guys have any idea who the number 1 defense and special teams in fantasy football is?
San Francisco.
The Bills?
They are 3rd. San Francisco's 3rd. Bills are 5th.
The Browns.
The New England Patriots are the number 1 fantasy defense. They average about 11.2 points per game. Number 2, Dallas Cowboys. I think if I were to pick one, I would say the Cowboys because I think doesn't Seth start the Cowboys? I think the Cowboys are on the best team's roster.
Seth's got the 49ers.
Niners is no, the Cowboys might be on the worst roster.
Libby's got the Chiefs.
Chiefs. So Cowboys, Buffalo, which are in the top 5, are on 2 of the worst teams. And Wes, you have Patriots on your bench.
3D chess.
So that leads me to then who is my overall MVP for the season. Fortunately, I couldn't pick any of my players because I'm not the best team. I am technically the 8th seed in the playoffs, even though I'm a top 3 team, but I'm the worst playoff team by who I am playing. Let's see what you guys think. MVP of the season, Austin Ekeler. I think he's kind of the deciding, he's the star, or the, what's the phrase? He's the straw that stirs the drink for Libby's team. It's just 20 points every single week. The quarterbacks kind of all balance out if you have a top 4, top 5 quarterback. The running backs, if you had a top 3 one, you were in really good situation. Josh Jacobs obviously got the best running back award, but Ekeler was on the best team, and his numbers weren't that far off. He was still the number 2 running back, so not that far off. Ekeler, I think, has been the most valuable player. I think he'll be one of the main reasons why Libby wins the championship. Austin Ekeler.
Yeah,
and then
he had a really good form, like week to week. And I feel like if you ask me who's going to have a better next 3 weeks between him and Josh Jacobs, I'd probably go Ekeler.
So I wanted to do something fun for my last award after giving the MVP. I wanted to give the LVP to the worst player. So my rationale for this was I wanted to pick a player that somebody started pretty consistently, if not all the time, and how that ended up working out for them. So what I did was, thank you to Fantasy Pros for giving me all the data, but there's a thing that they track where they track poor quality and great games and give you the total numbers that they fall into from a fantasy points perspective. So what I did was who had the most number of poor games, but also had at least one great game. So they showed you something at one point, so you were most likely starting them. And yet they ended with the largest number of poor games that you possibly could for someone you consistently started. I thought this was going to be kind of a needle in the haystack. One name did not surprise me, but the name of the person that wins the award did surprise me. If I were to say that these two are similar, you wouldn't believe me, but they are. Do either of you have any idea? You can just quick throw out a guess who I am picking as the LVP of our fantasy football league.
Alvin Kamara.
That is a great pick. He is not as bad as the person that I picked.
Mine's a very selfish pick, but DJ Moore. I think he had the one good game, and he has been terrible this year.
I did not pick DJ Moore. He is not even. He probably because you probably started him more, but he's not even close. This guy is going to shock you, maybe. It's Najee Harris. Najee Harris is the LVP. Here's Najee Harris in his great quality and poor stats. Najee Harris, in his 13 games that he played, had 10 poor performances. He had 1 quality and 1 great. Or 2 quality, 1 great. He was most likely started every single week. I forget who was it that had him. Stefan. So he's on the crazy team. I looked back at his week to week, just what numbers he was putting up. And he puts up 13 points pretty consistently every week, but his projection is always higher than that. So he is the worst or the least valuable player. He's not the worst, but I believe he was started the most and had the most poor performances by someone that was started pretty consistently every week. Now, I did say that there was someone very similar to him, plays the same position, that also got started relatively every single week and has the exact same poor starts, 2 quality, and great starts. Do you have any idea who that running back might be?
Zeke.
No, Zeke was pretty good this year. It's A.J. Dillon. I started A.J. Dillon all but maybe 3 weeks. He has the exact same lines as Najee Harris. Now, Najee Harris is way worse because he's a starting running back. But A.J. Dillon had the same number in 13 games that he played in. 10 of those were poor performances. He has a lower projection to hit than somebody like Najee Harris. But I thought it was interesting that those two were basically back-to-back on my list. But man, Najee Harris, he's really bad. So that concludes the players list. Do you have, so still going off of that, I wanted to ask you guys a couple questions because I thought some of the stuff that ended up coming out of this list was pretty interesting. Do you guys know, I gotta figure out here. Do you guys know who you would guess are the only players that did not have 1 poor performance the entire, as graded by this 1 poor performance? So on the year, 13 games, 0 of those poor. They were always either quality or great.
Eckler
is not one of them.
Joe Burrow.
Joe Burrow is a top player, but he is not one of them.
Mahomes?
So I'm going to get this up here. One of them is Mahomes. So I would use the same logic. It's pretty easy to guess the other one.
Jalen Hurts.
Yeah.
Travis Kelce.
So, no, Jalen Hurts and Patrick Mahomes are the only 2 players that did not have a graded poor game the entire year. Josh Allen and Joe Burrow only have 1. So I think if you were to just ask me how good Joe Burrow's year was, I would have said, it's pretty good. He's like a top 5 quarterback in every statistical category. He's really, really good. So I'll give you the top 10 here or top 13 here. So these are basically they don't bust ever, the 13 best players this year in fantasy football. It's Jalen Hurts, Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, Travis Kelce, Christian McCaffrey, Stephon Diggs, Tyreek Hill, Justin Jefferson, Geno Smith, and Saquon Barkley.
Geno
So
Smith. Wow.
obviously there's some players that are better than some of those guys on the list, but they had enough poor performances that kept them out of that, full on quality great score. I just thought that was interesting. A lot of quarterbacks up there. I thought McCaffrey was surprising. He obviously hasn't played the full number of games. He's only played 11. Same with Kelce, but still really good. So that's kind of the summary of the regular season. Do either of you have anything else to add on the regular season stuff you thought was interesting? Thoughts for going into next year's draft?
Fantasy is dumb and stupid, and I don't know if I even want to pick 2 keepers from my team.
Yeah, I have no strategy any year ever. It's all random, and I'm sorry I made this video so long.
No, it's all right. It's a year-end wrap-up. I mean, we had a lot to get to. Tim, who is your projected winner of the Fantasy Football League?
I think it's going to be Ross. I really do. I don't want to believe it, but I think it's going to be Ross.
Wes?
Let's go with Seth.
Wow. All right. I think I've given mine away. I think Libby rolls. The Thunder rolls, the Libby rolls. Garth Brooks. Man, I never thought I would have done a Garth Brooks reference. What a job. Not even a job. Yeah. You guys got an extra 50 minutes? I thought last episode I actually turned around a little bit, but oh well, nobody cares about that. I would say, yeah, I think Libby wins. My overall strategy / notes for the year as a whole is I think this is the year that wide receivers fully locked up the most valuable players that can be drafted. I think more wide receivers will be kept as keepers for next season. And I think that's how people are going to draft a lot next year is I think you're going to see those dollar values on the wide receivers go up, up, up.
It's true. We said it from the start. Also, ban defenses.
All I know is I'm getting Travis Kelce.
Ban defense.
Priority numero uno, baby.
Not when I get my rule finally instated that bans tight ends, and then you're starting Travis Kelce as your third wide receiver when he finally breaks his knee and has to retire. Not that I'm cheering for that.
What a positive thought.
Football.
Wes has just wanted to say football for the last 5 minutes.
Hold it in.
All right, thanks Wes for coming on. Great job by you. Football. What more can we say?
Football shit.